Recently, my videos have included more of my own compositions, some of these based on ancient chants or plain song. The response reading through the comments has been very encouraging, and it's really inspiring me to do this more often. However, there have been a few comments from viewers who don't like it, and one described it as making him cringe that I'm adapting these ancient melodies of the church. Well, my response is simply this. If we should exclude all music which is built on an ancient melody completely adapted to new purposes, then we would be deprived of perhaps the greatest Advent hymn tune ever composed. Sunshine equals happiness, one of the simplest equations of life. Especially today, on the first Sunday of Advent, as I make my way to an ancient church in the county of Devon. You can't help but notice this canal, which I'm walking alongside. The origins of this canal go all the way back to the 1700s. There was an act passed in 1796 for the building of the Grand Western Canal, which was supposed to link the Bristol Channel with the English Channel via Exeter. And so it would avoid the need for cargo ships to go all the way round Land's End and all the delays that would entail. They started work in about 1811, but the costs really started to mount. Very difficult to build a canal, I gather. And also there was growing competition from the railways. So eventually they had to give up work. But the remnants of this canal still stand here as an amazing and immensely beautiful feature of this landscape. As we pass the church, on the other side of the canal, it's worth pointing out a couple of challenges involved in today's video. First of all, the chapel is in a field of sheep. I hope I won't get too much trouble from them. But most importantly, although there is an organ in the chapel, I don't know if it actually works. So, just in case, I have a backup plan. Let's go and see. This must be the largest congregation I've ever played to. Sorry, ladies. It's the other door. Even in England, so rich in history and heritage, it's unusual to find a building so special as this. You travel hundreds of miles to spend a moment in a few square meters, but time stands still. The Friends took over this building 25 years ago, saving it from ruin, and now, with a canal flowing gently past and sheep watching over the doorway, this is a unique kind of paradise. But it's also a memorial to glories long past, a meeting place for life and death, darkness and light. Exactly 1 year ago, on the first Sunday of Advent, I filmed at Wells Cathedral. And it's so remarkable to think of the contrast compared to a church as small as this one. I suppose for me the defining feature of buildings like this is light. When the church is smaller, light has a greater presence. But the other key difference is that this church was intended as a private chapel. It dates to the 15th century, and at that time, certainly in the West Country, it was quite fashionable for a house to have its own private chapel. The lords of the manor here were the Ashford family, successive generations, and this church is really a memorial to them. There is one very grand tablet on the north wall to John Ashford, who died in 1689. I see also some evidence of memento mori up above the west door. I think that these pieces of stonework were outside at some stage because they've been really eroded, but you can still make out a skull, battered by the elements, but no less a reminder of our fate. I'm afraid that churches are intimately connected with death, aren't they? And perhaps the most poignant memorials of all are those to children. Here in the chancel, just to the left of the altar, there is a tomb to a young boy, 1 year old, who died in 1666. He's referred to as a spotless child. Does that have something to do with the plague, perhaps? Or his temperament? I don't know. But we do know that he was the heir to the Ashford estate. His father had high hopes for him, I'm sure, but he was only just over a year old when he died. And the estate then passed to his father's brother. And after he died, it then passed on to the Sandford family. So that was the end of the manor's association with the Ashfords. Now, my reason for coming here is to record some music for you. I'm pleased to say that there is an organ in this chapel, but whether it works or not is a different story. I can always make organs work, even if I use them as percussion. But the question is, how much of it works? Are there going to be notes that don't? I can already see that one of the knee levers is broken off, and it looks like this instrument hasn't been played for a while. Nonetheless, let's give it our best shot. The organ here is a Mason and Hamlin, built in Boston, Massachusetts, sometime after 1880. They were shipped over to England in their thousands, but their glory days have passed too, and most are a wheezing mess, bellows torn to pieces by mice and decay. I put on a brave face and begin resuscitation. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. You might not know those words by heart, but you'll certainly know them when you hear them sung with great gusto every December from our tiniest parish churches to our grand cathedrals all over the world. There is a strange nostalgia combined with mystery, magic, gravitas, and fiery warmth about that hymn. It's got to be one of the greatest ever composed, certainly for the season of Advent. I was so surprised by that tiny Mason and Hamlin harmonium at the chapel. I had no idea it was going to work. But luckily I didn't need my backup plan, which was the harmonium in my van. I have no idea how I would have got my harmonium across that field. Maybe I could have asked the sheep for some help, but I doubt they would have offered it. It would have been a complete dead loss if the instrument in the chapel had not worked, but I have to say it was a fantastic harmonium, and we're going to hear more from it in a moment. But first of all, let's talk about O Come Emmanuel. Were the words and the music written at the same time? Who wrote the music? Who wrote the words? I think you will agree that the story behind this Advent hymn is one of the most amazing of any musical composition. Our story begins way back in the 8th or 9th century. In the great monasteries, monks sang chants in the 7 evenings leading up to Christmas Eve. These were called the Great Advent Antiphons, focusing the mind on the coming Christmas. Each chant is sung on a specific day. Each has a title. Read the sequence backwards and you find the acrostic Ero Cras, or I will be present tomorrow. Look at some of the words, the names. You'll recognise them from a familiar Advent hymn, but it would take 1,000 years to reveal itself. At some stage in the depths of history, the text of these ancient chants was paraphrased or summarised into one single Latin hymn, and that was first printed in 1710. But more than a century later, a priest called John Mason Neale from England discovered this text and decided to translate it into English. And now comes the most intriguing part of our tale. Neale was a fantastic scholar, educated at Sherborne School and Trinity College, Cambridge. His translation closely resembles the one we sing today, but still he had no music. So he turned to an old companion, a musician who'd already helped him popularise Good King Wenceslas and In Dulci Ubilo. His name was Thomas Helmore, choirmaster, scholar, but most of all plain-song expert, one of the few who could read ancient musical notation. Helmore found a fit for Neale's words, a magical and mysterious tune which he claimed was from a missal of the 13th century. O come, thou dayspring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Fantastically evocative words, but hang on a minute. Did you just say the music was from a French missal? In other words, the composer Thomas Helmore is saying he didn't write that. He took it from an ancient manuscript and fitted the music to these words. Well, where is the ancient manuscript then? Was he telling the truth, or was he just trying to give his music a bit more weight by saying that it was adapted from an ancient melody? Well, the answer to that question remained a mystery for well over a century. Everybody just thought that Thomas Helmore had composed the music for O Come Emmanuel, and everything about it coming from a French missal was nonsense. Until 1966. A story more than 1,000 years old now enters the modern age, thanks to a musicologist called Mary Berry. She provides the icing on the cake. Reading through manuscripts in the Paris Library, she stumbled on a page of music from the 15th century, and you've guessed it, the music is exactly the same as the tune we all thought Helmore had written himself. His music was ancient after all, and his skill was not in writing, but in retrofitting ancient music to modern words. However, there is a dark side. The music Helmore chose was never a Christmas or an Advent chant. In fact, it was originally sung at funeral services. He simply lifted funeral music and reappropriated it for Advent. The grieving text becomes irrelevant as we all joyfully sing, O Come Emmanuel. Is this appalling? Is it disrespectful? Or is it just genius? So, not only have we learned that O Come Emmanuel is a Victorian reworking of ancient music and text, but also, more concerningly perhaps, that the music you sing every year and associate with Christmas is actually funeral music. Make of that what you will, but to me, my choice of church today, with all of its grand memorials, suddenly became so much more meaningful. I'd like to return to the chapel now, because after I'd finished playing O Come Emmanuel, I lifted up the organ stool and I found something quite remarkable. The sun is just beginning to set, which has completely transformed the light inside this little tiny chapel. And I'm really impressed by this organ. It's so haunting, it's so melancholy, it's so imperfect. It really does do justice to Advent music in a completely unique way. However, there are some notes which don't work, but that doesn't matter at all, does it? You can fill in the gaps. But what is absolutely extraordinary is what I found underneath the organ bench, or inside the seat, I should say. You should always look inside these because there are relics of the past inside them that perhaps nobody's seen for half a century or something. And inside this one, apart from finding the old broken knee flap, I have found a printed piece of music, which I'm afraid to say I cannot read because most of it has been scratched away over time. But it seems to be called At Evening Time It Shall Be Light. And it's a piece written by a composer called C. Kingston Powell. And it's a Christmas piece. I really don't know why it would be printed on the inside of this stool. But I've got to take a photo of that, take it home and play it. We have to hear how that piece sounds. What an extraordinary find. Unfortunately, I can't try playing it here because that would involve standing up to play this organ, putting the bench on top of the organ to read the music, and somehow that just doesn't work. I think I'm going to have to take it home and have a look at it, but I can't wait. This was a discovery I was not expecting to make, and as a result I've had to film this part of the video in 2 different sittings. I've even had time to have a shave. There was absolutely no information online about the piece or the composer, but I did find out that the Sunday Companion was a religious journal published in the years around 1900. That doesn't explain why it would be glued to the inside of the organ stool, though. I have absolutely no idea why it would be there. Anyway, I had the task of deciphering this piece of music, which was extremely difficult because when you look at this score, which I've now blown up on my iPad, you can see that lots of the bars are missing at the start of each stave. There seemed to be more than one bar missing on each of these lines, and that means that it's virtually impossible to recompose this piece of music or to finish the jigsaw, if you like. You simply cannot work out exactly what was there in the original score. And as for the words, the situation is just as difficult. There by the open window, watching the sunset die, which, gap, thoughts of the days gone by, thoughts of youth's golden morning, when life seemed all bright and fair, and hope in its radiant looked glowing from everywhere. It's so confusing. And then a chorus, Lord, lead us and guide us, and ever near abide. Big gap. In thy mercy, when earth's vain shadows flee, that there shall shine the eternity. Well, Mr. Kingston Powell has clearly lifted some ideas from a very sad hymn called Abide With Me. This Christmas piece seems to be a combination of nostalgia with optimism and, surprisingly, some funereal themes as well. When earth's vain shadows flee. It's quite moving. I wasn't expecting to find a piece like that. But the question is, how does it sound? Well, you can't even read the key signature. It's either in D minor or D major. But at the Viscount at home, I was able to work out that it was in D minor with a chorus in D major. Let's just listen to the themes as far as you can see them. And the chorus. So, in an unexpected twist, I'm going to finish this video by performing this piece in full. I could hardly say it's a piece by C. Kingston Powell, because it's really by me. I have to complete this piece based on the fragments that I've found in the score, but most of the music is clearly going to be by Ben Mayton. You may even hear some strains of O Come Emmanuel in there somewhere. And I'm going to complement it with the last footage I took at Ashford as the sun was setting, a glorious sunset, and there is absolutely no doubt that it will fit the spirit of this music perfectly. I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed today's music. If you have, do remember to subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but as my Advent sequence continues, you'll be notified as soon as the next video becomes available. It's lots of work putting these films together. I'm going to let you into a secret, and that secret is it takes me 7 days to make each one. There is not a single day where I am not working on these videos. If you enjoyed the music, you might like to leave me a small donation. Look underneath this video and there is a PayPal link. Click on that and you can leave me a small contribution if you'd like to. Thank you so much for your support. So, from the village of Ashford, music found in a mysterious corner of an ancient chapel where you would never expect to find it, we conclude today's video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Cheerio.